Mark.
So how do we get there then? I mean, how do we get to the point where, as you say, the countries like Britain and France are trying to appease very angry publics in their own countries? So this symbolic measure is meant to appease them and make them a little bit happier about the situation. But how do we get to the real sanctioning of Israel itself? Can you ever see a situation where countries like Britain or France or those kind of countries would actually put sanctions and be able to, put their big boy pants on and actually do something that is, against their wider, against their own interests?
It's plausible, Mark. It's not impossible, and it's doable, to be honest. If they think strategically, because basically they have way too much interests over here in the Middle East, and by not taking enough action to prevent Israel from undertaking its very sinister endeavors in the region, which is compromising regional security at large, and not only Palestine, and even the interests of the Europeans on the long term, they will lose this region for good for other powers. And you know what I'm talking about, Mike. Especially after the bombing of Doha and the bombing of Qatar, and how the United States reacted to that. Even core U.S. allies in the region now are reconsidering their long-term alliances with the United States to see how feasible this is. So at the end of the day, European interests will be jeopardized. And God forbid, if Israel has its way and it wreaks havoc upon the region, and this region descends into a regional war, do you know what will Europe have coming its way, Mark? More terrorism, more refugees and migrants in the millions. So this will not be beneficial to Europe by any way, by leaving Israel to its own devices to do whatever it wants, unwarranted. The Europeans will pay the price at the end of the day. So I think now it's up also again to the European civil society, to the European public, to the European academia, to ante up the pressure and keep the pressure on their governments so that they can take more action. I think that the people power in Europe is able to achieve that, and they might be able just to. I think for Prime Minister Starmer or President Macron, satisfying their own people and their own civil society and their own publics will be more important than pleasing Mr. Trump or trying not to anger him enough, because of course they are taking a substantial risk by doing what they're doing, and the risk that President Trump might actually flip and do something drastic against the Europeans. So unfortunately, they are in a tough predicament. But at some point, you have to be on the right side of history. And I think that this is a pristine chance for Europe to be finally, for once, on the right side of history when it comes to the global south, to the third world. What's going on in Palestine? What's going on in India, Pakistan? What's going on in between Ethiopia and Egypt? What's going on in the multitude of countries all around the world, whether disputes over borders, water, resources, land, is the colonial legacy
Indeed.
of the Europeans. So they
Indeed.
have to own up to that and
Well,
attempt to and they have to rectify these historical errors. And it starts with Palestine, Mark, the most egregious of them all.